Alright, so my name is Christine Hassan, and I'm doing a project on socializing our children, an observation of socialization of our cultural values and norms in an education setting. So where did I conduct my study? I conducted it at Irvine Valley College Development Center. As you see, it's in the picture. The Irvine Valley College Child Development Center offers a child care program that provides quality child care for children ages 2.5 to 5 years of age, and they must be completely potty trained. I took this off the website, but a lot of the children there did not know how to use the restroom just yet. Their mission statement, which I also took off the website, says that the Irvine Valley College Child Development Center is a student service dedicated to offering a quality program that will meet the lifelong learning needs of children. The Child Development Center serves the community, the faculty, and Irvine Valley College students by providing a quality program on the campus. The Child Development Center is a center-based lab school for the Human Development Department. We provide the classroom environment for Irvine Valley College students to observe appropriate teaching methods and working with the children and support their educational goals and academic success. So my research question, I wanted to identify American values and norms, or our cultural values and norms, in the early stages of socializing a child in an educational system or setting. I chose preschool students because of their age range. Just mastering the art of using language to communicate was interesting to see because a lot of the things that they communicate to me was what they've observed and absorbed from school or at home. I wanted to compare this to the Levinson educated student because in his article or in his work he discussed how education is ultimately a product of our culture. So education makes us who we are based off what our cultural standards are, I guess you could say. Here are some more pictures. This is the nook, which I'll be discussing in the next slide about my site description, and here's the outside, which was another place in the preschool that I was able to observe at, and there's a teacher there. So in my setting description, here's another picture that I was able to take. So what I observed was this classroom was very colorful. There wasn't much words besides prints that the teachers had provided for students or themselves. Anything that was for the children was in big block letters so that they could sound it out. Their names were also included with their pictures on the side of the wall to the left of the room once you first enter. So if you're looking at the picture itself, you can see that there are long brown tables with the red chairs. Those were mainly for activities or during snack or lunchtime. The nook in the center of the room was during reading time, which occurred typically after eating so that they could, just relax. And then to the right was the stool that the teacher would sit on with a radio so that she could play some of the audio books that they had. And a lot of the children would participate, clapping, singing, dancing, whatever the teacher had assigned for the day. To the far back right of the room, there was toy kitchens for a lot of the girl children to play with. I noticed that a lot of the toys were associated by their gender, which was interesting to see because if you look at other cultures, gender wasn't really specified because of their language. And in our language and our culture, gender is basically known once they're out in preschool and playing with toys and such. Bathrooms to the left of the room were exposed so that children that needed assistance from their teachers would be able to get that. So, yeah, what they said on the main board of their website was not really. Anyways, you can see that blue gate in the picture also. That was a kitchen that connected both of the rooms. So there's another room to the other side, which included more children and another classroom, etc. So my methods, I observed for several weeks 4 to 5 year olds in the blue room. Each room was coded with a color and categorized like children based off their age. So I was observing 4 to 5. I participated. It was a participant observation. I also did informal interviews between child and teacher. I observed reoccurring events or interactions that occurred so that I could get down to the answer of my question. When I participated, several children brought it to me and wanted to play or teach them I played or taught with them or taught to help them make origami, assemble puzzles together. I also assisted teachers because there are only 2 assigned to the room, and sometimes they struggle to supervise and clean and cook the food all at the same time. And here is another picture of the observation room, which us as observers could watch the children. They could not see us because the windows were tinted from the outside. So some of the interview questions that I asked the children: why do you think that? How do you know that? What does that mean? Why do you think that question? Child would typically just smile and pause and look at your face because they're not really sure what kind of answer you're looking for. I would suggest an answer normally, and they go off into this storytelling mode and basically tell me what they've learned. So I could tell what kind of norms and values were just based off what they would communicate to me. How did you know that? They'd go into this whole history of how this occurred, how they learned this from either their parent or their teacher. So yeah. And then what does that mean? Again, this tests their knowledge and gives me an idea of what they've absorbed in their stay at school. Interviews with teachers. How did you handle conflict between children? This was one of the questions I asked one of the female teachers. And, well, actually, there were only female teachers there. So that doesn't make a difference. Anyways, her response was, once I've heard one of the children involved in the fight raise their voice, I immediately call out to them. I get eye level with both of them and tell them to use their words. Listen to both sides of their story while consoling whoever is upset. Normally, it's both. Once I know how to solve the problem, if it's a sharing or whatever, I tell them what needs to happen next. The second question I asked was, when a child is disruptive, how do you reprehend him or her? Normally, I try to point out the child. So this is her response. Normally, I try to point out the child that is obedient and applaud him. I notice that other children will copy. If the child continues to disrupt, though, I would talk to the student privately, which I didn't really see occur in the classroom, specifically with disruptive children, because they'd make a mockery out of the child. I'll discuss this in the next slides, but yeah. Here's a couple transcriptions that I included. The first one had to do with conflict being resolved. So just looking at this, the first boy was holding onto a book. The second boy grabs a book. The boy cries. They have this little fight, tug of war. The teacher immediately intervenes, making it know that she's coming. She asks what is wrong, and you can tell which child was guilty and which child was not. They're not really good at lying at this age. So she was able to, find who was the culprit and then tell them how to, strategize or use their words in order to prevent this from happening next time, which I did see occur with some of the children. They did learn this way of speaking to one another. This one boy, for example, told the other boy, "Can I use that after you're done?" And he waited patiently for his turn rather than steal it out of his hands. The next slide was disruptive child. So this one boy was could not sit still whenever it was reading time. This was after playtime, so he was still riled up. And he did not like the fact that they had to clean because he knew that meant that it was reading time and he didn't want to sit still or listen to the teacher. So the teacher, instead of pulling him aside, she sort of makes a mockery of him and laughs with the other teacher, finding this whole thing amusing. And I thought this was, something that wasn't as funny. His expressions and his noises that he made were funny, but I could tell that he was frustrated and did not like this whole situation. And that's something to consider because he probably does have some sort of attention deficit, and the teacher didn't really take that into consideration when handling this child. So my results and discussion, I wanted to compare this back to some of the literature we had discussed earlier in the semester. The first one I wanted to compare back to the Japanese culture, in which conflict was in our culture more intervened, while the Japanese watched from a distance as the child resolved it themselves. So that was interesting to see. The second was a comparison to the Tracton children, in which they were basically similar, because in order to survive in this preschool, you needed to learn how to communicate, and a lot of the minority groups in this preschool that didn't know the language could not make their demands and therefore were, overlooked, or if they were disrupted because of it, they were, made a mockery of it. I wanted to also compare this back to the silence dialogue, which also has to do with which has to do with the Black people and being a minority as well. So again, that comparison with, minority groups and majority groups, the minority obviously being handled and inappropriately sometimes when they should be considered as, individual as well. So my conclusion, the process of socialization is a step-by-step sequence beginning in all systems one is associated with. The education system socializes members of their culture to a role in their community. The role intertwines with the rest of the system as it progresses along, and the individual grows and understands their purpose in the group eventually, hopefully. Some of the limitations, which I should have discussed prior to that, was that there was no audio. I was not allowed to take any audio, hardly any pictures I needed. The very few I could take were kind of blurry and not that well done. The pictures that were well done were actually from the site, which is kind of ironic that I wasn't allowed to use any recording or photography, just out of the protection of the children. So I suppose they did get permission. Also, another limitation was that I only studied at this particular preschool, so it doesn't really represent much to an overall, population of ours and our cultural values and norms. So just looking at IVC in general. But you can see that this kind of reoccurs in every school as well. And then also, of course, limited time. I didn't really have much time to study this in a longitudinal kind of study just to see how these children develop these skills and so on. So that is my presentation.